us look at the do's and don'ts of oral presentations. We're going to discuss this in various aspects, which include managing anxiety, delivering your presentation, using presentation tools, managing your time, and answering questions. The column here represents what you should do, and the column here represents what you shouldn't do. Let us look into this one by one. First, managing anxieties. You need to learn to accept some anxieties. Anxieties normally happens even with experienced presenters. This is very normal. It means that you are very concerned with your presentations. You will need to overcome these anxieties. With proper practice, the anxieties level will reduce. And you will need to visualize confidence so that high level of anxieties is not observed by the audience. You need to be familiar with your presentations, memorize most of them as necessary, and if possible, you plan and write up your script for your presentations so that your presentations are actually guided. This helps you to gain better confidence that you know what you are doing and what you are going to say during your presentations. If possible, before the presentations, visit the venues, be familiarized with the venues, know the space available, have an idea in terms of the size of the room, imagine the numbers of the audience, know the facility provided in the venue, where you find the power sockets, where you're going to stand in front of the audience, where are the screens, and so on and so forth. You gain better confidence when you know the value well. Next, you should concentrate on your key point. Where all those key points are quite guided, you can actually plan ahead before the presentations. Always stay focused with the key point. You know that you are not out of the topic. In the proper pace, you gain more confidence during your presentations. And you need to realize that the audience is on your side. They do not actually sit there wanting to penalize you. They are actually learning from you. Whichever you say it, they're going to listen. They're going to respond politely to you, as this is an academic presentation. It is the cultures of the academic community. Normally, you don't encounter very difficult audience. You may also breathe, take a deep breath, settle down in order to release your anxieties, and try to manage the symptoms of nervousness. The idea now is not for you to hide your nervousness. It is for you to manage it and to overcome it. There are ways to overcome it. It is only when you come more well prepared and you know that you are well prepared, then your nervousness will reduce. These are the don'ts for the managing anxiety. When you feel anxious, do not completely rely on the written scripts, as if you are memorizing the script, standing in front of the audience, but you are actually not there, not in the mode of interacting with the audience. It is as if you are avoiding something psychologically, but you know that what actually happened is that you are still doing the presentations. There is no point for you to avoid that. Just overcome it. Do as per what you have prepared. Don't try to avoid it. Be ready to interact with the audience, giving eyes contact with the audience, and you will observe the response from the audience. You gain more confidence with your presentations. Don't go and read every single text in your presentation slides. Again, this is another psychological way to avoid something, as if you are not there, standing there as a robot, reading every single word of it. Same thing, this is not going to help with your presentations. It's only going to make it worse. It will discount the impressions by the audience. you will feel less satisfied with the response given by the audience after the presentations. Another thing you shouldn't do is you do not have sufficient practice, or you overwork your practice where you are still in the mode of practicing just before the oral presentation. First, doing practice should be before the oral presentation, and you need to do the adequate practice until to a level that you are satisfied with your pace. You have proven yourself able to finish your presentation on time, and also you observe yourself manage to memorize the sequence and the points which you have designed in your script of presentations. And then when it is about to start your oral presentations, your focus now is to clear your mind to manage your anxieties. Additional practice at that particular instance is not going to helpful, because the root cause now is the anxieties that you need to manage. Next, we will discuss the delivering of your presentations. We're going to look into this in three main parts, which are the verbal component, use of words, the vocal component, use of our voice, and the visual components, the body language. Let us first deal with the verbal component, the use of words. You should open and close the presentations in a professional manner, because you would like to portray that you are professional, confident, and you know very well what you are doing. Next, you use the spoken English style, not written. There is slight difference between the spoken English and the written English. It would be rather awkward under some circumstances when it is only applicable for the written English. Next, speak in active voice, as it is easier to be comprehended by the audience. Use the correct technical terms. Use simple and concise words. Keep the sentences short and concise, and give verbal signals. Your ultimate goal is to make the audience to easily understand the content of your presentations. All this will need to service the ultimate purpose of your presentations. You know that the usage of the word can actually be planned ahead before the presentations, especially during your rehearsal and while preparing your script of the presentations. You make sure those words, proper terminology, simple sentences, active voice, spoken English styles, all of these are taken into considerations, and you will have to practice it before the presentations. These are something that you shouldn't do. Use slang or informal language. Memorize your papers and deliver it verbatim. Read your PowerPoint slides. Read the subheadings, and so on and so forth. Again, you have to look back to the purpose of the presentations. If any of these contradict to your purpose, you shouldn't do. You may also imagine, as a student or as a normal person, went through the formal educations, we are very familiar with being an audience, listening to the presentations given by other peoples, such as your teachers, your lecturers, speakers, and so on and so forth. I'm sure they're going to be good presenters and poor presenters. You imagine the conditions where you find yourself in a presentation section as an audience, listening to a speaker who you find very boring, not engaging, and you know that that is a poor presentations. You observe the characteristics. What are the things that you dislike about this presenter? How these presenters can improve in terms of the presentations? Then you should upload this into your own presentations. Those that you dislike, you should not apply it. You will need to avoid it. And those you find good, you will need to adopt it. The second part, it will be the vocal component, the use of our voice. This is slightly harder. This can only be reached through proper practice. I believe no one can come with this naturally. Some may be talented, but not without practice and rehearsal. Therefore, you will need to rehearse your presentation using an audio or video recorder. Then you can always play back and observe your presentations. Any areas that you can improve, any unnecessary words that appear during your presentations, any way that you can improve your intonations. Is it effective for you to emphasize certain things, and how you're going to tune your voice under different circumstances. Next, you will need to pronounce your word correctly and clearly. This is again quite challenging for us as a non-native English speaker. The only thing that we can do is we learn from our daily life, listen to proper English from the radios, from the TV, from the movies, from those who can actually speak proper English, and learn their pronunciations. Next, you will need to articulate your words clearly. Minimize the use of fillers. The filler includes the words that unintentionally came out during your presentations, especially when you are thinking for the next statement to be made, such as okay. As you can see, in fact, all this can easily be grabbed if you try to record yourself. Record an audio for your presentations during your rehearsal, play it back, then you realize that there will be a lot of fillers, and these fillers normally keep on repeating every now and then during your presentations. You will have to overcome this. I remember when I first undertaken an academic post, I will need to do presentations in front of the students. I always observe myself unintentionally having the words okay every now and then throughout the lecture. I knew that was my problem, and it spent me so long trying to overcome it. Even now and days, these filler words still comes once a while during my presentations, but the frequency have significantly reduced. This normally happens in the young academicians as well as the students who do not have sufficient experience with the presentations. Unless you do something to overcome it, it will be forever there, and this is quite challenging for you to remove. If possible, you minimize it. Next, you should vary the tones of your voice to keep your audience attention. This is also something that I need to learn. Not easy, especially for us, never went into the proper training on the public speaking. I see some of the colleagues, they can present extremely well, good intonations, very attending, having the ability to manipulate the voice as per what he intended to. And this is going to make your presentations more lively, and the audience is able to pay more attention. Next, you need to express your enthusiasm for your subject. This is something that you cannot hide and normally cannot be made up. If you are enthusiastic about your subject, you should express it through your presentations, from your voice, from your body language, from your gestures, from your eyes, but not through the words. Expressing enthusiasm using the words only is not convincing. Next, you should emphasize the keywords in the presentations to heighten the impacts of your message. If you could, manipulate your voice to pay more emphasis, to give a strong message to the audience in terms of the emphasis which you would like to draw their attentions. And then, you will need to pause at the end of the sentence. Make it clear to the audience that the sentence has ended and you are about to start with the next sentence. Don't speak too quickly and avoid speaking in a normal tone, as this is going to make the presentations to be a bit boring. Next, we look into the visual components, which is the body language. This is again something you need to practice. It doesn't come naturally and it requires a good control of your body language to make your presentations more effective, or more specifically, to make it less distracting. You will need to rehearse your presentations using video recorder, and then you replay it and observe your body language. You will find some body language which does not actually fit to the message of your presentations, or some actually implying that you are very nervous, lacking confidence, and so on and so forth. You have to intentionally correct that and make it as a habit for your presentations. Dress properly for the presentations. Make eye contact with the members of the audience, and these are the things that you shouldn't do. Lean to one side, sway or rock in a place, fidget, pace back and forth aimlessly, and so on and so forth. If you observe any inappropriate body language, which is not necessary, some may be quite distracting, you will have to overcome it. Next, using the presentation tools, there should be proper interaction with the screen. That means the screen here being displayed to the audience. If possible, you will have to provide some indications to guide their focus, pointing to the area that you would like to refer to during your presentations. Don't just talk to the screen, or don't just stand in front of the screen talking to the audience, expecting audience to look at the areas which you intended to look at. There is another common mistake which normally we observe from the students. You know that for the screen to be displayed in front of the audience, you need a computer, and then most of the time the computer will be just in front of the presenter, and the big screen which is displayed to the audience will be behind the presenters. What happened is that the presenters is actually interacting with the screen, but it is the screen of the computer pointing to the computers here and then, as if he's trying to pointing something, drawing the attentions of the audience on certain points here, but the audience is unable to see it on the screen. This is an unintentional move that the presenters is actually trying to do the interactions with the screen, just that it cannot be seen by the audience. Then the presentations become less effective. Another common mistake that you observe, especially when using the LCD projector, the presenters is standing in front of the LCD projector, blocking the lights come out from the projector and blocking part of the screen without knowing it. You will have to be careful with this, because if you block the LCD projector, the audience will not be able to see the screen. Therefore, when you visit the venue, you have to have all this planned ahead. Imagine yourself presenting in front of the audience. Know where is the LCD projector, where is the pathway of the ray coming out from the LCD projector, and make sure you don't block the lights from the LCD projector. You may also use the laser pointer or use some pointing tools for you to do presentations. This can guide the attentions of the audience. Next, you can manage your time. Don't spend too long on the introductory materials. Don't explain the slide more than you have planned to, and don't practice your presentations too fast. All this you can actually plan ahead during your rehearsal. You know that the introductory is actually meant to prepare the audience before the main thing is being presented. It is not the main focus of your presentations. As long as the audience are well prepared with all the necessary fundamental, and you observe that the audience now are settled down, they can pay good attention to your presentations, you should proceed with the main thing of your presentations. You need to time your presentations, not to overshoot the time allocated for the presentations. In terms of answering the questions, you have to plan beforehand. Try to work out the possible questions beforehand and get those answers prepared in the case that this kind of questions are being asked. Make sure you understand the question correctly before you answer. You can always seek for clarifications by the audience regarding their questions if you don't really get the actual meaning of the questions. You may also repeat the questions if you think that the audience may not have heard it. Sometimes the questions are posed by one or two audience, which the others audience may not have properly heard it. It is a good practice for you to repeat the questions, make known to everyone what questions that you are actually trying to answer, and prepare a supplementary set of the slides. This will help you to improve the quality of the answers that you give to the audience as compared to answering it on the spot in a very short given time. These are the things that you shouldn't do, such as pretend if you do not know the answer to a question. It is also impolite to interrupt people when they have not completed asking their questions. And don't be negative about your work. While answering the questions, always be polite, be professional, and trying your best to answer the questions given by the audience. Sometimes you may encounter the situations that the questions asked by the audience that you cannot answer. You will have to be honest to the audience that you don't know the answer, or probably suggest some directions of talks, clarify that you don't have the proper answer. Normally the audience will be able to accept that. You don't have to act as you know everything in front of the audience, especially when you do not know the answer. The audience will be able to notice that, and this is not a good image given to the audience. The same principle applies to those doing these presentations in front of the examiner, especially postgraduate students. They feel stressed, especially when the examiner asks some critical questions which is beyond the expectations of the postgraduate students, or the postgraduate students is unable to answer. They feel anxious, they don't know what to do, and the entire answering question sections become a mess. In fact, you don't have to worry about this. You know that this kind of presentations, when you have examiners sitting in front of you, it is their obligations to test and to measure the level of understanding of you on the subject that you are presenting. Their ultimate goal here is not to penalize you. You need to know this fact. Not being able to answer certain things. For example, out of so many questions being asked, there are one or two questions that you don't know how to answer. It doesn't really matter. It gives the information to the examiner that you are able to answer most of the question except one or two. And what normally in the mind of the examiners, they are actually trying to figure out what are the areas that require further enhancement in terms of your research. The motive is trying to help you only in the ways of asking questions. Some nice examiner may also give you some comments, suggestions, and directions for you to ponder of for the improvement of your research study. Having those problems being identified by the examiner, is normally not as big deal as what the postgraduate student thinks. It's not going to be at the end of the day. In fact, it helps you to identify some limitations which can actually be overcome with the enlightenment given by the examiners. In fact, if certain critical questions being asked by the examiner, the first thing that you should come across your mind when you do not know how to answer it, you can actually have a pre-assessment, the criticalness of the problem being pointed out by the examiner. Is it going to jeopardize your research study, or is it merely reflecting that you have some minor areas require further understanding which you might need to consider so that your coverage of your investigations will be more thorough? Then you will not overreact in the case that you don't know how to answer the questions posed by the examiners. With that said, I hope this will be helpful to the presenters, especially those of postgraduate students. You have to think from the minds of the examiners, which they are very clear of what they are supposed to do, where are their boundaries. And then if you really observe, based on your previous experience or experience of your friends who encounter the similar case, being asked certain questions by the examiner, not being able to answer, and the entire Q&A sections become unbearable, but at the end of the day, your friend or yourself still pass or can score your presentation. That is the main reason of the implications that the student think of, which is not as severe as they thought of as compared to the actual scenario. If you do not know the answer, try to explain what you know and to be honest that what you do not know. And if the presenter is nice enough, probably you can seek some opinions and comments from the examiners. He might be able to give you guidance for you to improve. Then you make the entire Q&A sections to become more comfortable and everybody is happy about it.